This session is made possible by another one of our incredible partners, SheerID. SheerID's identity marketing platform, it helps create red carpet shopping experiences by delivering gated and personalized offers that reward students, teachers, the military, and other consumer tribes. So with us now is SheerID's Chief Marketing Officer, Sai Coppola. So Sai, thank you for joining us today. And welcome to Commerce Week's virtual stage.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, folks. In my role as leading marketing at SheerID, I've been fortunate to work with leading brands and innovative marketers from brands like Nike, North Face, and DirecTV on their customer acquisition and retention programs. So I'm excited to have a chat with Jamie Dykes from DirecTV on how they acquire and retain subscribers. Before I jump into that, I would like to spend a couple of minutes setting the context in what we're seeing in the marketplace, as well as a recent study from Personalization. So if you look here, look, we're in a pandemic. It is even harder to get the attention of the consumer. They're focused on staying safe, keeping their jobs, and homeschooling kids. So how do you create that emotional connection and get the attention of the consumer continues to be a big challenge for brands. In a subscription business, it's not just about acquisition, it's also how do you retain them? And that's something we will talk with Jamie today. Now, knee-jerk reaction for some brands has been, if you go back to the prior slide, a knee-jerk reaction from some of these brands has been, how do you, is to just discount it, right? But smart brands understand that that drives brand dilution and also sets customer expectations beyond the crisis. So how do you manage that? And last but not the least, we have seen a recent survey, vast majority of consumers expect brands to support affected populations during this pandemic, whether it is the first responders or even teachers and students. Given that we are seeing increased focus on personalization, as well as aligning your acquisition efforts with customer corporate social responsibility initiatives. Move to the next slide. This is just a recent study from Forrester, where it's not surprising, vast majority of them marketers still say personalization is the top goal. Although there are challenges with data, because at the end of the day, data has to be meaningful. There are a couple of factors that's contributing to it. One is going forward with increased privacy regulations, the quality of the third-party data will continue to deteriorate. Not only that, we're also seeing browser technologies evolving where you no longer can use cookies as effectively. What that means is, as brands, we need to focus on first-party data. There's been an explicit exchange between the consumer and the brand, where the consumer raises their hand and says, yes, I will give you information about myself in exchange for a value or offer. We're also seeing most marketers understand that identity attributes like life stage or affiliation they found it to be more useful in getting the attention of the consumer. 67% of the marketers believe now marketing to a consumer tribe is much more effective, where a consumer tribe is essentially a group of people who are tied together, tightly knit around a common identity, whether it is teachers or military or nurses. If you move to the next slide, it's not a surprise, therefore, we are seeing brands using a new form of personalization called identity marketing. This is a technique in which it enables brands to deliver a gated personalized offer to a specific consumer tribe. Because the members of this tribe strongly identify as being part of that community, when you give a compelling offer just to that specific group of audience, it creates a virality and word of mouth, and that's what we're seeing. With that, I would love to have Jamie Dykes join me here. To start, kick it off, let's show a video, I guess, from DirecTV.
Sundays aren't the same when you move away from your team.
I'll take you from here, announcer guy. I've got just the ticket.
Is this real?
As real as this Super Bowl ring, it's NFL Sunday Ticket from DirecTV.
There's so much.
Football? Yep. It's every game, every Sunday.
Wait, no matter where I live?
That's the whole point, dude.
Yeah!
The most glorious Sundays ever. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get every live out-of-market game every Sunday, only on DirecTV.
Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Good, Sai. How are you doing today? Great introduction.
Good.
Thank you for kicking this off.
Sure. Hey, before we jump in, maybe you can spend a couple of minutes just giving a little bit of an overview of DirecTV as a business,
Sure.
especially NFL Sunday Ticket.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think we have a slide for that too. So Sunday Ticket's been around for 27 years since the DirecTV satellite service was launched back in 1994. It's an exclusive service to DirecTV. Basically serves residential and commercial customers like bars, hotels, things like that. We also launched an OTT version called NFL Sunday Ticket.tv about 7 years ago. It's a much more limited audience. Essentially, we, with our rights agreement with the NFL, are allowed to sell that product to customers that cannot get satellite, as well as college students. So the premise of the product is pretty simple. On Sunday, we're going to deliver every NFL game except for the game on Sunday night. So roughly over the season, there's 256 games. We deliver 200 of those out of market, so that if in your local market, you would still get your CBS and Fox games. But if you're a Cowboys fan living in Tampa, here's a way for you to watch the Cowboys. So that's the premise of the product.
Now, the pandemic has been a turning point for many brands, including sports. So how has NFL Sunday Ticket, traditionally approached customer acquisition, and how has COVID changed that?
Well, let me focus on the .tv side. It's probably a little bit easier, more in line with what the premise of the discussion here is. I think we have a slide here for this as well. So normally, if you look at the left-hand side, a typical NFL season, we start the marketing calculus right after the Super Bowl. Who's going to be our NFL spokesman? When are we going to start to shoot our commercials, which typically are in May or June? We have to start auto renewing or customers that are already on the service, make sure they're in line and ready to go for the following season. And then we launch everything, the consumer facing marketing in typically early August to coincide with the NFL preseason and get sort of a halo effect going on. And then specifically around the college audience, we're doing stuff on campus. We've got street teams running around. We're doing door hangers in dorms. We work with the bookstores, the fitness centers to insert Sunday Ticket information as they're picking up their textbooks. Well, all of that, of course, went out the window this year, and we pretty much had a good inkling in late April, early May that what we normally do from an advertising perspective was just not going to work. One, from a safety perspective, we couldn't have a studio with 15 or 20 production folks, camera folks, sound, etc., plus bringing in these athletes that had their health at risk as well. So we pivoted to an animated approach this year, which is what you saw in that video. And just to give you a sense of what that meant, when we did our Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott spots, we sent one person to their home. We literally produced the spot through Zoom. So we would tell Patrick, he had the lines in front of him, but say the line, okay, say the line again, say the line again, with one guy recording it. I mean, it was very down and dirty, very simple, because that's what we had to do. And then we did the animation and sort of married that stuff up. And so you find in these types of scenarios, you got to adapt. You don't really have much of a choice. And then in terms of the marketing itself, you had a couple things going on. Was there going to be a season? Was there a confidence level with the consumer that there would be? with MLB delaying theirs, NBA and NHL doing the same, college football season up and, not really sure where they were going to go. So we had to communicate to our existing customers that, yes, there's going to be a season. We're going to bill you. If anything changes, we'll obviously take care of all of that at the end of the year. And then from a new acquisition perspective, it was, pivoting, quite frankly, to an all digital model for the most part, because we didn't really have much of a choice. Too many campuses were shut down.
Now, as you move to from acquisition perspective, all digital, how did identity marketing programs fit into the mix?
Well, we kept with our normal approach of a lot of social media, so Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, et cetera. Those we've done in the past, but we moved more of our chips, our budget into that area. We heavied up more on podcasts this year than we have in the past. We found a lot of good return from that perspective. We still do, emails, obviously SEO and other ways to target customers with display ads and things like that. It was just really getting away from most of the in-person, what I'll call analog approach. Those had to be put on the back burner, with the one exception on the bookstores. Again, you start to adapt. It became a logistics question. So instead of doing inserts in textbooks where students went to the bookstore to pick up their books, now we worked with Barnes and Noble and the book suppliers to deliver the inserts directly to the supplier. They would put them in the books and everything else, and then when they ship them to the students, they still happen. But again, you're on the fly. You gotta change and adapt as quickly as you can.
Given the focus was on students, how do you ensure these offers were redeemed only by students?
Well, that's where you guys come in. So, Sheer ID has been a great partner of ours. I think we've got a quick slide here to sort of show how it works. And just to set the mechanics of this, Sunday Ticket, we have two flavors of it. We have what's called a basic version and a max version. The max version includes NFL Red Zone as well as a Fantasy Zone channel, and it's $400 a year. The student price is only $99. So we are, you mentioned earlier about gating these special identity offers. This hits that target, and we have to make sure that the right customer is getting the right offer. And so when you go to NFL, Sunday Ticket .tv on the website, there's essentially sort of two different paths here. If you're a student, you would click on the student eligibility path. You put in the name of the school, first and last name, and the birth date. That API goes back to Sheer ID, and within seconds, it will tell you whether you're eligible or not. And this is not something where it's like, do I have a .edu address and I get in? It's much more sophisticated of checking with the bursar's office to make sure that student is actually enrolled, is active, is taking credits. It could be a graduate student, could be an undergraduate, but the point is, medical school, et cetera. But the point is, they are a legitimate student. And at that point, they're on their way and they get the offer. If they don't get the offer or they're not eligible, they go into another bucket of eligibility, which is more of the full priced approach.
Yeah, and that's what, Jamie, we are finding is this technique just gives flexibility to marketers to define who their target audience is and give a really compelling offer without worrying about cannibalizing the rest of their audience. Now, in your case, you focused on Gen Z audiences. Tell us more about, why you are focused on that audience and how are they different from other audiences?
Well, I have two of them in my family. So my son is a senior in college out in Milwaukee, and my daughter is a freshman who should be in Chicago, but is here because her campus is shut down. So again, I was living it, in real life. Like, how do we market to these college kids when I've got one here at home and one is on campus and still taking classes? The easy answer is Gen Zs were That's the next segment that's growing up, and we the next segment that has the purchasing power and everything else. So certainly it's a group that we will want to try to get as lined up and advocates for the product as early as we can. Now this segment is digital. They're digital natives, right? They just do things differently. They expect things differently. They expect to buy things differently. Over the last couple of years, we've even had to change some of our pricing methods. We used to only take a credit card. Now we'll take Apple Pay. Now we'll take Google Pay, Amazon Pay, so on and so forth. So everything from the purchase flow to how you're presenting it, you have to keep in mind who that audience is, and so that you can convert them to hopefully advocates for your product.
Once you got acquired them a given year, it's a annual subscription. What do you do in terms of converting these students into full-time or long-term customers?
Well, there's a couple of things. So the hope is you're able to convert folks early in the process. So freshmen, right? And if you can get them to renew year after year, and hopefully you've got someone that's had the product for 4 years, or if they're on the 5 or 6 year plan, maybe 5 or 6 years. When they graduate, what we typically do is we will market to them with promo codes and things like that. We'll have discounts to the full priced offer. We don't necessarily have a bridging offer that, sort of in between the price of college and the full price, but we have enough direct marketing communications with these folks that you can continue this product. We'll give you a bit of a break as you ease into what I'll call the real world, as you get your real job and so on and so forth. So that's really the approach there.
Was there any other consumer tribes you thought about or that was relevant to you in this current context?
I missed the first part of your question.
Any other audiences you thought about?
Yeah, we've dabbled in a couple of different things. Military being one, and that's something that we, keep in mind the NFL is our partner in this, so it's a little bit more complicated than maybe other services. So, but there are some things that we're looking at, and we'll continue to look at and see if it makes sense to go down that path. Make sure we feel confident that it can be executed properly, and we're delivering on the promise that we would make.
So, just in the interest of time, I think we're running out of time here. Wrapping up, what kind of advice would you give to marketers who are looking to execute on similar innovative programs where they're able to, once you define a target audience, figure out what kind of a consumer tribe or socially tightly knit group they can target with a compelling offer? So in terms of what was your approach when you just kicked it off, what kind of advice can you give to other marketers and other brands?
Well, I think the main one would be if you have the resources, and obviously every company, every firm is different, but if you have the resources and the budget, seek out the experts. When we decided a number of years ago to do a college offer, we could have done it internally, and we could have said, yeah, if you have a .edu address or something like that, and kind of done it on the I don't want to say on the cheap, but do it on the less sophisticated approach. And I think we learned fairly quickly that's not the way we wanted to go. So we sought out the services of the experts and ultimately landed with someone like ShareID. There are reasons why there are firms out there that excel in various things that maybe you don't, because you don't have the resources or the budget or enough personnel to do it. And I would say, instead of necessarily taking that all on yourself, make the business case. I think if you do the business case right, the ROI will pay out for going down the path of using that expert knowledge from the outside.
Awesome, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions from the audience I'd love to get to in the few moments we have left. So, Jamie, obviously you guys were probably throwing a lot at the wall this year. I would imagine a lot of testing, right? And you mentioned some of the different channels that you used. Were there any channels or tactics that specifically surprised you or maybe outpaced your expectations when it came to students?
I mentioned briefly the podcast. And again, our product is a little bit, different in sense that we only get one chance at this, right? So the season happens, and our sales have to happen in August and September. We don't get a do-over. I mean, it's why my November goatee is getting grayer and grayer by the second. But that's the deal. So, to use an analogy, we sort of throw in 20% of our chips in early August, but all the rest are all in by late August, and it's either going to work or it's not. But the podcast, I think, did well. The advantage you get with the podcast, or uniqueness you get, is instead of just doing your typical display messages or search terms or some of the other things, sometimes the host of a podcast can, he or she can really run with it, right? And weave in their own story. Yeah, I saw the game yesterday and I would have had it without Sunday Ticket. And oh my gosh, did you see this and this and this? And they become sort of, your little 10-second read now became a 2-minute commercial. And because of the customers having an allegiance to that host, it gives it more, more certainty or a sort of the good housekeeping seal of approval. The other thing that we also did really quick, we created a website called sundayready.com. And, we were going back and forth in the messaging concept of, do we allude to COVID being there? A lot of brands were saying things like, in these difficult times, and we're stuck at home. And we thought about that. We were definitely halfway there to doing that. And then we decided, no, we're going to try to do some sense of normalcy, but we're not going to totally ignore it either. So on that website, we did some animations and also did some audio with Mahomes and Prescott and Jimmy Garoppolo and those folks. And the idea was, whether you're home for schooling or whether you're away, it was a way for you to click on this animation, send a nagging animated or an email to mom and dad, hey, I really need this thing. It's only $99. Can you spot me, kind of thing, or send it to aunt and uncle or whatever else. And it was a bit of a, little bit of a hustle. We were trying to put that ammunition in the students' hands to help them sort of push that out and get it paid for by somebody else.
Very cool. Now, as you start to look ahead to 2021, I mean, how do you guys start to plan for next year's campaigns? What's that timetable look like? Obviously, how much does the pandemic enter into that planning equation? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks saw the news this morning around some of the pharmas saying a vaccine could be coming out. Fingers crossed if that's the case. Are we back to a bit of a more normalcy in the fall when specifically college students are back on campus? We'll have to figure that piece out in terms of that kind of marketing. But normally, right after the Super Bowl, we're in it. I mean, we're figuring out who the right spokespeople are going to be, going through that talent process and discussion. Typically by April, we've got our April, May, we've got our creative sets down. We know where we want to go. And so we're halfway through the season right now. We're still selling this product. Our prices drop as the season goes because you have less games, of course. So we want to finish out this year strong, and then we'll get right back onto it in end of February.
So I'd love to give you the last word here in terms of whether it's working with the folks at Sunday Ticket or elsewhere, tactics or strategies that maybe have surprised you or you've seen work well throughout the pandemic that you could share with the brands and agencies in our audience today.
What one thing we've seen may not be relevant to the NFL Sunday Ticket as much is we've seen brands actually do exclusive offer just for frontline workers like medical workers, and they've seen significant success. In the past, they might have just done just a corporate social responsibility initiative, like, hey, I'll give $1 million towards COVID crisis, something like that. But they're pairing that with an offer just for the audience, and they're seeing tremendous success with that. And think of the audience, right? If you're talking about medical workers, you're talking about 15 million people who are average income of $100,000. So the disposable income there. So that's one thing. But in general, what we are seeing is when you create a compelling offer for your target audience, who are the target audiences, but messaged in the identity how the consumer looks at themselves. If I'm a teacher, one of the research we've seen, as a teacher, you see yourself teacher first, then a parent. So when you're creating an offer and using that as an identity, we're seeing much better conversion rates.
That's terrific. So I know we did show the key takeaway slide briefly, but if we could put that up one more time, gentlemen, feel free to chime in with any additional thoughts. Our audience did want to see it one more time.
That's another thing we're seeing is especially subscription companies. When you get a Gen Z audience and give them a compelling offer and build that relationship early on, we're seeing a significant uptick of conversion from, especially other brands we've seen, from a student pricing to full pricing, because they are now used to the product, they love the product or the service, and in many cases they've customized that service. And when they graduate, they subscribe to full price.
I'd agree with that.
Terrific. Well, again, I'm a big fan of Sunday Ticket, although I'm glad it wasn't around when I was in college, because Sunday was my day to catch up on my work. But thank you so much for being here, Jamie and Sai, and of course the Sheer ID for being a terrific partner on today's event. We really, really appreciate having you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jamie. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sai.